thick rod to fucking swing that shit. Topwater muskie is sick. Fucking fully bend over, and I've caught my big ass. Pull it. Let it sink, let it sink, let it sink. I'd kill myself on the spot if that was me. So, alright boys. So this video is for anyone who is thinking of starting musky fishing, getting into musky fishing, and wants to know what it's like or see what it's like from someone that's just a couple steps ahead of them instead of someone that's 50 steps ahead. I just started getting serious into musky in the past like year and a half, and I've caught some good fish so far. Like still very new, still a noob. Definitely not up there with like a lot of big hitters in Southern Ontario or in the States and stuff, but I know when I was starting out, there wasn't a lot of like videos from like kind of newish guys. So like the top guys would tell you tips, which were good tips, but it was just like, if I was new, I just want to know the basics. Like what are the basic things I need to start musky fishing? So if you're new, you're starting musky fishing, you're thinking of starting musky fishing, I'm going to tell you my opinions and what I think you should start with, and things that I regret and things that I don't regret about starting in the past few years and what I've learned. And if you just want to hear from someone who's just a couple steps ahead of complete beginner, someone who's never done it. So right now it's end of summer, so I'm making this video now to prepare for the fall. So hopefully you watch this now and you can file the things and do all the things that I say in this video for the fall time, and also the spring. I do fall and spring. So let's get into it. I'm gonna go over basics about just getting into it in terms of rods, reels, line leaders, baits, and just like thoughts and takeaways and stuff I regret, stuff I don't regret, what I would have done differently, and stuff like that. So let's start with your gear. So let's start with we'll start with your rods. So musky rods and bass rods are not the same thing. A heavy bass rod and a heavy musky rod are completely different things, and let me show you what I mean. So this rod right here is a standard heavy bass flipping rod. Now this rod is, well, this is an extra heavy, so it's a bit bigger, but look at the difference. Extra heavy musky rod, heavy bass rod. I don't even know if the video does it justice, but the musky rod is an absolute meat stick compared to the bass rod. So right off the bat, if you're thinking of getting into musky fishing, you need to buy a musky rod. They're not the same as bass rods. They're way bigger, way thicker, way stronger. They're a different type of rod. So medium heavy musky rod, heavy musky rod, and an extra heavy musky rod are not the same as medium heavy, extra heavy, and heavy bass and pike rods. So first things first, you need musky rods. Now, what rods do you need to start with? Well, I only have 3 musky rods. They've served me well so far. They serve me in the spring. They serve me for bucktails. They serve me for glide baits, jerk baits, and they serve me especially for big rubber, which is my favorite because I fish in the fall a lot, and that's when you use big rubber. But I'll get to that later. So what I would suggest as a new guy getting into musky fishing is you get a medium heavy musky rod, which is what I have right here. This is my medium heavy Daiwa Pro Rex, I think it's called. Medium heavy Daiwa Pro Rex telescoping. So it's an 8.6 length, but it telescopes to like 7.6, I think. So medium heavy. And I would honestly suggest this rod. Me and my buddies have this rod here, Daiwa Pro Rex. So throughout this video, any gear and stuff that I talk about and promote, if it's available for purchase on Amazon, I will have the link down below. And if you use that link to buy the product or use that link to go on Amazon and buy other products, you do put a couple bucks in my pocket. They're affiliate links, so you don't have to use them, but if you do, I appreciate it. Thank you. So medium heavy. Definitely you need a medium heavy rod, a medium heavy musky rod. Now this rod is perfect for the spring. This rod is perfect for smaller baits, smaller glide baits, smaller swim baits, smaller bucktails, and smaller pull pause baits. I would say highly suggest getting a medium heavy rod. And the second rod I would suggest everyone get, I would suggest you start with 2 musky rods as a beginner to get into it to cover all your bases. And the second rod I would suggest is an extra heavy musky rod. This is an 8.6 extra heavy power. You need an extra heavy and a medium heavy musky rod. This one's the Mojo Musky. I super duper love this rod. This is actually the first musky rod I've ever purchased. Super great rod. You ask anyone in the musky industry, I think everyone would agree that Mojo Muskies are pretty solid. They're expensive, but they're great. The medium heavy Daiwa rod is a bit cheaper. It's like 180-ish, I think. This one's closer to 400 now, which is a lot, but I mean, you're getting into musky, you're going to spend some money. So why would I say medium heavy and extra heavy? The reason is because In the springtime, when I use small everything, small bucktails, small swim baits, small glide baits, small jerk baits, the medium heavy rod casts them a mile, and it just serves it well. You know, like it's a small rod, it's easy to cast, so that's why you use a medium heavy. And then in the fall time, when you're using bigger baits, for example, stuff that weighs almost a pound, when you use stuff like this, how big this is compared to my arm, when you use baits that are like a foot long and weigh almost a pound, you need a thick rod to fucking swing that shit. And when you use big swim baits, big shit in the fall, you need a thick rod to throw just the baits because they're so heavy. You getting into musky fishing, you might not realize how fucking heavy these goddamn things are. They're not like bass baits. That's one thing that shocked me. Like, these aren't bass baits. These are big baits. They're heavy. So you need a heavy rod. And the other reason why you need a heavy rod, which I would find useful, is because when you're throwing big bucktails, like you think a bucktail is not a heavy bait, right? Of course. But something that I didn't realize getting into musky fishing that I do realize now, I don't even have huge blades, but the blades on the bucktail is what causes like the heaviness when you reel it. So when you use a bait like this big rubber, you need a heavy rod to physically throw the thing in the water. But having a heavy rod helps when you're using blades with very big blades, like bucktails with very big blades, because you don't need the power to throw it in the water. You need the power for when you're reeling it. These blades, when these things spin in the water, they cause so much water resistance. It's like a parachute in the water. You're reeling in like a parachute. There's so much water drag because the blades are big, that with a light rod, the rod is like fucking fully bent over and it can't even handle the just how heavy the blade feels as you reel it because of the water drag and resistance of the blades. This is something I didn't really even think about would be a thing getting into musky fishing, but it is a thing. So 2 reasons you need a heavy rod. 1, to physically throw physically heavy baits, and 2, to throw bucktails with giant blades. So when you reel it through the water, your rod isn't completely bent over on the retrieve. So that's why you need a heavy rod, and that's why you need a medium heavy rod. A lot of musky rods are telescoping, like I showed you. I know as a bass guy, you might think that's weird or cheap. It's not. It's normal in the musky world. It's actually helpful because without it telescoping, you won't be able to put it in your rod lockers. So don't worry about it. It's not cheap or weird. It is normal for the musky world. Telescoping is perfectly cool. I know I thought it was cheap initially, but it's not. Now, rod length. This is a really big one that I made mistakes on. I have 3 rods. 2 are 8.6, one's 8.1. Do not, well, in my opinion, do not buy a musky rod shorter than 8.6. You're going to regret it and you're going to buy another rod to replace it. I have an 8.1 rod, never ever gets used. It's a heavy, never gets used ever. Whatever bait I would throw on that, I'll find a way to throw it on the extra heavy or on the medium heavy. The reason why you want minimum 8.6, to be honest, I would, if I could flip a switch and have all my rods 9.6 right now, I would do that. Then every rod I buy from here on out is going to be above 8.6. I have 8.6 rods now, but every rod I buy is going to be above 8.6, and the reason is because they're just so short when it comes to figure eighting. So when you figure eight, you want to like not have to move your body that much. Like when the bait comes to the boat, you don't want to have to like bend over and really like stretch and reach as your bait comes to the boat and do all this movement, because 1, that's your body doing a lot of movement on the side of the boat. It's causing commotion. It could scare the fish. 2, the step you take to reach is going to be scaring the fish. If you have a long ass rod, by the time the bait comes to the boat, all you got to do, you don't have to bend over. You just shoop, 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 because the rod is so long that you don't have to bend over and strain yourself to do the figure eight. 1, figure eights all day, you're not going to strain your physical body. You're not going to strain your body because you don't have to bend over. Imagine every time you cast, at the end of the cast, you have to bend over and do this fucking figure eight, especially if you're using a blades. Doing figure eights with blades are so annoying. So a long rod prevents you from bending over, hurting yourself, and prevents you from physically moving, possibly scaring the muskie. So it's the quality and ease of use and ease of life you get from a long rod on the figure eight is just like unmatched, 100%. Definitely don't get smaller than 8.6. What's up? I'm just shooting a video right now. I'm just making a video right now. Yeah, I'll talk to you in a bit. So yeah, I would definitely get 9.6 or like 10. It seems scary to me, like it seems big, but I would probably even try 10. But definitely 9.6. But if you're new and you're nervous about getting a big rod, definitely 8.6 is the lowest I'd go. And 8.6 is fine. You know, like I figure 8 with my 8.6, it's fine. But now that I'm getting more into it, I would definitely like to try a 9.6. And of course, the other obvious thing is cast distance. If you have a longer rod, you can cast farther. If you have these heavy baits, a longer rod really helps you like cast it farther. So just positives all around. I don't really see a negative from the 9.6. Plus, most of these 9.6 rods are going to be telescoping, so you could still fit them in your rod locker. And if you're looking for companies, I mean, I don't have too much experience. Like I said, I just started. Oh, fuck. But the rods I have, I really enjoy. The Daiwa Pro Rex, say 8.6 medium heavy. Mojo Musky, 8.6 extra heavy. I really, really enjoy these rods, and I think you can't go wrong with them. So I know Daiwa has some other good rods. St. Croix has some other good rods. There's a company called they make the assault sticks and stuff. Chaos Tackle is a big musky company. They make baits, and their rods are very popular. I really want to get one next. They're kind of hard to find in most stores, but they make good rods. So yeah, try those out for rods. 2 rods, medium heavy, extra heavy, 8.6 at the absolute shortest. 8.6 to 9.6 is what you want to get. Okay, now we're on to the reels. So just like rods, just like bass rods and musky rods, reels are not the same. You can't, well, you don't use bass reels for musky. You need larger reels. So for a comparison, this is, I don't know, this is probably like a 150 size bass reel. Your standard bass reel, that's a 300 size reel. Now, I wouldn't even buy a 300 size musky reel if I could do this over again. I bought this before I even really got into musky fishing, not knowing anything. I would replace it, and I would only get 400 size reels. This is a 300, get a 400. The 300 is good. I've got a 48 incher on this. I've caught tons of musky on this. So I don't want to say it's bad, but I just think that a 400 would be better. More torque, more power, more line, more strength. I just think it would be better. And I also feel that sometimes on the backswing, when I click the bail and I'm on the backswing and throwing a heavy piece of rubber, and also when I'm cranking in big blades, I just feel like this small reel is taking a beating. Like I feel like he's like like I hear it crunching inside sometimes. Like I feel like it's taking a beating. Whereas I think if I had a 400 size, it would do it with ease. It would reel in big bucktails with ease. It would be able to like cast overhead a heavy piece of rubber, like and hold the tension when I click the bail on the cast. It would just hold it better. I just think 400 is better. Everyone I see uses 400. So if you're getting into musky fishing, don't get a 300. It's kind of an awkward black sheep in the middle size between bass and musky. Just go with the 400. All right, get a 400 size reel. Reels I would suggest the Tranks. I got this when I used to work at sale, so I did not pay retail for this. But Tranks, sick reel. Everyone would agree it's sick, but it's very expensive. Other good reels that aren't as expensive. Daiwa, again, makes good reels. I personally don't have any, but I was thinking of getting one, and I know people that get them. The Pro Rex reels, I think they're called. Daiwa has good ones. And there's this one going around the town now called the Pisky Fun Reel. It's on Amazon. I'll link it in the video. Those reels are like super cheap apparently. Like they're apparently like 150 or they're super cheap. And people are skeptical as to whether they're actually good and durable. But I have a buddy who we went on a Lake St. Clair weekend together, and he used it all weekend long, and like it held out. And I have another buddy who picked one up, and he fished with it, and it seemed fine. So I'm not gonna fucking say to get it and then it breaks on you, but I have not seen bad things about them. I've only seen good things about them. I've personally seen my buddies use them. I would personally buy one myself next just to actually try it. So if you want to go discount, try a Pisky Fun Reel. I'll put it in the link in the description. But yes, 400 size only. Now, if you're asking Thomas, what's this type of handle? This is called a power handle as opposed to just the normal handle. The difference, just I think pretty much just easier to hold and just more torque and easier to reel. I would suggest them because if you're just casting and reeling all day, especially if you're casting and reeling bucktails where it's hard to reel because there's so much water drag, holding onto a big thing like this and reeling is so much easier than holding on to just a normal little thing, like a normal little one here, right? It's easier on your hand, your thumb, your joints. So power handle all the way. And I just find it's easier, like even from casting pull pause baits, just it's easier to just quickly grab and reel. Like the other one, sometimes like you kind of miss it. The handles are so small, so and it looks sick. Look how sick that looks. So power handle, I think it's pretty much just a little bit better than the normal reel. Not a necessity like getting a 400 size. This 400 is a necessity. Get a 400 size reel. This is just a nice little touch that I don't regret buying, and I would suggest you get if you have the option. Oh shit. Okay, gear ratio. This is the big one. I spent a lot of money when I used to work at Sale on a nice Calcutta. It's like a five something gear ratio, and like maybe I don't know about Musky yet, and I know there is techniques where you need a small gear ratio, such as like swim baits in the fall when you want them slow, or maybe even some bucktails. Actually, no, bucktails you probably want a high gear ratio, but I would not get any gear ratio that's 5. Get 6 and 7s. Like get 7s. Just stay normal, because if you have a low gear ratio, it's so much harder to reel fast than it is if you have a high gear ratio and then just reel slow. And a first-hand example I have of regretting getting a 5 gear ratio is on pull pause baits. So for example, like a Medusa type bait, where you throw it in the water, then you pull it, then you let it sink, then you pull it. Like this is what it looks like. You cast, pull it, let it sink, let it sink, let it sink, let it sink, pull it, let it sink, let it sink, and you kind of keep doing that the whole way through. The slack you create on the pull, if you have a 5 gear ratio, or even on jerk baits, I've found this when I was musky fishing with my jerk baits, the slack you create through these techniques, it's like holy shit. Like you gotta reel so much with a 5 gear ratio just to fucking bring that slack in to do the next pull. It's like a pull and then a pull. It's like fuck. I hate using it. I hate it. My 7 gear ratio, I do a pull, it's like a 1-2 crank. Pull, 1-2 crank, or even with the jerk bait, jerk, jerk, crank, crank, reel up the slack, jerk, jerk, crank, crank, reel up the slack. Just similar to like bass fishing. It's so much better with a higher gear ratio. Don't even bother 5 gear ratio. Okay, now line and leaders. Line, I just been using 80-pound braid. I don't know if that's the best line to use, but I've heard to use it. It has not failed me, and I think that's generally what people use. So 80-pound braid, Power Pro. I'll link it in the description. That's what I use for line. For leaders, I'll use like 18-inch leaders, I think they are. This is pretty much the main one I use, this VMC fluorocarbon. I'll link some leaders in the description. Now, again, more bougie, I've started to use wire leaders as well as fluorocarbon leaders. I'm not a pro. There's better leader videos on YouTube on what leaders to use for what, but I like to use my wire leaders for baits that baits that need a lot of action imparted onto them. So like a jerk bait, like a glide bait, stuff that when I twitch it, like I want the bait to look nice. And when I twitch it, I want the twitch to transfer from the rod to the line, through the leader, to the bait, right as possible. Whereas if I have a fluorocarbon leader, if I twitch my rod, by the time, like if my bait's just like chilling, like say this is my bait attached to the leader, if it's just chilling in the water, by the time that jerk hits the top end of the leader, it has to like pull the slack of the leader, and then the bait gets kind of like this like subdued jerk, instead of like if it was a wire leader, say it was taut the whole time, my rod jerks, when the left end of the wire leader would feel the jerk, the bait like instantly feels a jerk because it's taut and it's tight the whole time, whereas a fluorocarbon leader has some bend in it, so it impedes action of baits like glide baits and jerk baits, at least what I've found. So I would get 2 different types of leaders to start. A fluorocarbon leader, which are found like Bass Pro and everywhere. I get 18-inch. I use 100 to 150 pound 18-inch fluorocarbon leaders. Has not failed me yet. I've caught a lot of fish on them. Maybe there's stuff I have yet to learn about leaders, but I like these so far as a newbie fisherman. And I also have wire leaders. I think my wire ones are shorter. The wire ones are usually much shorter. I think I have probably like 8 to 12-inch wire leaders. Again, I think also like 100, 150. I think. So yeah, 2 types of leaders to start. Get a fluorocarbon leader and get a wire leader. 12 to 18-inch is the highest I'll go for fluorocarbon. 100, 150 pound. Whereas wire, I think they're shorter, around 12 inches, and I think it's the same poundage, like 100, 150 pound. Wire leaders for your jerk baits, your glide baits. Fluorocarbon leaders for your swim baits, your pull pause baits. And I think bucktails are better for wire leaders. I'm pretty sure that's the general consensus in the musky world, but I've been using them on this as a noob and I've still caught, but I'm sure wire leaders would be better for bucktails to have them go straight and true. Okay, baits. What are some baits that you need to start? The most important, actually not the most important part, with musky fishing your gear is more important, but the baits. What do you need to start? Well, you need bucktails. I would say get a couple to start. I would say get a couple swim baits, and I would say get a couple pull paws. Now, we're just talking someone who's brand new into musky fishing, so I'm just going to tell you the 3 to start. If you want to know other ones that I think that you should maybe get into, that I've also been getting into, I've been getting into new musky baits, comment and I'll tell you, but I'm just going to give you 3 ones that you need to start out the gate that I'm happy that I started with and that I would suggest a new guy also start with. So 1, the bucktail. I would suggest 2 different types. I would suggest you get a single-bladed bucktail. I would suggest you buy a couple single-bladed bucktails, and I would suggest you buy a couple double-bladed bucktails. So this is a Joe Booker, I think 500 size bucktail. Simple, single blade with a 1 treble hook, very small. This is a killer for spring. One of my favorite baits to use in the springtime. I don't really fish musky much in the summer, but I'm sure it's good in the summer too. This is what you would use on like a medium heavy rod. Very light, very easy to throw. You could even throw this on bass gear. Now, bit of a heavier bucktail. Like I said, 2 blades. So it's going to be a lot more water resistance and drag. And notice the 2 trebles. Now, just a general rule of thumb. As I get into musky fishing, I'm nervous. I'm nervous with these single trebles, and I've lost fish on these single trebles, whereas these double trebles, I've lost less fish. Whenever possible, I will buy a bucktail with 2 trebles. Sometimes bigger bucktails will have, like, for example, look at this. Joe Booker is nice. Their bucktails this size have 2 trebles. But some other companies, I'm not going to shit on them. I don't even know which ones they are. Actually, I do. I should know. No, Sparky Baits, 2 trebles. Look at this. Nice. Some companies that have bigger bucktails, such as these, I might have took them out of my box, but some companies will have a bucktail this big, but they only have 1 treble. And like, I don't know, maybe that's fine, but I don't like it. Like, more hooks to marry. Like, I want to make sure this fish is absolutely pinned when I hook it. So, I would try to buy bucktails with 2 trebles whenever possible. However, when you're buying smaller bucktails, they'll always have 1 treble. So that's the norm. There's tinsel, and then there's like bucktail, like, or fur. I don't think there's much of a difference. Personally, I like the fur, but I've also pretty much mostly only used ones with the fur. I've more fish caught on the fur. I don't know if I've ever caught one on the tinsel, but I don't use tinsel as much. So I don't really know much on that aspect, but I like the fur. Both are good, I guess. Tinsel's more flashy. But by fur, I think it's actually called bucktail. I don't know. I think that's what it actually is. Or whatever, fur. Number 2 would be a pull pause bait. So this is it's called a bulldog. This is called a Medusa. These are pull pause baits. They have 2 trebles, they have like a squiggly tail, and they're just heavy fucking baits. What you do with these, like I explained earlier in the video, you cast, and then you pull your rod so this thing comes through the water like, phew, and then you let your rod die, and it comes through the water, and then it nose dives. And then, phew, so it goes like, phew, phew, phew. It was some of the funnest fish I've ever caught on this bait I caught last year. My first ever pull pause baits caught fish were last year. Super fun, super heavy baits to throw. I think these are good all year round. I love them in the fall. I mean, I mostly fish for musky heavily in the fall anyway, but really good baits to throw. I love them. I mean, I don't know which one's better. They're both awesome. Medusas by Chaos Tackle or Bulldog by Musky Innovations. I'll link them below. Personally, I use the Bulldog more. I have used it more than the Medusa. I find the Bulldog casts farther easier. I find pulling it through the water is a little nicer. And I find the figure 8s on the Bulldog to be easier than the Medusa. I find the Medusa sometimes like goes on its side upside down on the figure 8 sometimes, where the Bulldog is always nice, clean, crisp motion. I find the Bulldog nose dives quicker than the Medusa, which may or may not be good, but with figure 8ing with this type of bait, the quicker nose dive, the quicker it gets back down to the bottom, I find it easier to figure 8. I'm not saying one is better than the other. I'm saying I personally have liked the Bulldogs at this point in my career better, but I know that Medusas absolutely slam fish as well. Now, the third type of bait I would suggest you get as a musky beginner, And my favorite type of bait, especially in the fall because it's the easiest to use, musky on it, um, is the swim bait. Now, there's multiple different companies that make them. My personal favorite is as of now, the Chaos Tackle Poseidon. There's also I feel so bad right now because the guy who makes these, he took me out as a guide service. He's a guide, um, and I forget the name of. This is his company. He makes these baits, and I forget the name of the actual baits. I'm gonna put them on the screen, but these baits are good. They're nice because you can kind of use them as pull paws as well, but they're nice swim baits. They have a good paddle, and they have this nice little additional appendage on the top. But I like the Chaos Poseidon because they have a nice big tail that thumps. Super easy to cast, comes through the water so easy. You don't strain yourself. And I just catch fish. Like I'll show you a couple of the fish I caught on the video now. But man, I love swim baits. These are bigger ones. I would suggest these type. This is like an 8-inch. These are 8-inch baits. I would suggest these, the Chaos Tackle Poseidon, and I can't think of the name of this bait right now. I'll put it on the screen. I would suggest these for fall time. These big baits for fall. However, for the springtime, I would use a smaller one. These baits are made by Bass Magnet Lures. I forget their Musky division or whatever it's called, but Bass Magnet Lures, Mike Nabolski, I think is the guy. Shadzilla. These are the small ones. These ones I try in the spring and like the warmer months, but in the fall, go big or go home. So again, just this type of swim bait. Very simple. I'll add these below too if they're on Amazon. So there you have it. You need a swim bait. You need a couple swim baits to start. I would start with a large and a small size. I personally like dark and white, like black and white as colors in general. And small and a large swim bait. You need a small and a large bucktail. And I would get a small and a large pull pause bait, whether it's the bulldog or the Medusa. So these are the 3 types of musky baits that I would say as a noob, get in your box to start with. Now bonus, fun bonus. Ah, damn it, it's not here right now. Fun bonus, topwater. Topwater musky is sick. I caught musky on topwater last year. Super sick. I'll show the fish I caught in it. I don't actually have the topwater on me now. It's in my garage. I'm too lazy to get it, but I'll pop the picture of the bait I use on screen. It's like a giant whopper plopper. I think Joe Booker makes them. I think. I'll link them in the description if I can find them on Amazon. Those are super fun to use. I use them in like 3 to 5 foot of water. I think like late summer is the time to use topwaters, but I'm still new, so I'm still learning. But topwater is a super sick type of bait to use for musky as well. So there you have it. That is my video on, as someone who's just gotten into musky fishing, what I suggest someone who's just about to get into musky fishing start off with based on my limited experience. I'll link everything below that I think you would need or find helpful. And now my thoughts on it is it's super sick, it's super fun, it's super addicting. Oh, wait, actually, another thing, your net. You need a new net. This is a bass net. For comparison, this is my bass net. And this is my musky net. I'll put my bass net inside of my musky net. You need a new net. You need a big net. If you think, oh no, it don't fit, buddy, no, it won't. I caught a 48-incher. No chance in hell was that fish going in a bass net. And the last thing you want on this earth is to catch a fish of that size. And the reason you can't bring it in the boat and lose it is because you were too cheap to buy a musky net or too lazy to buy a musky net. You got the gear, you got the spots, you got lucky, you had the fish by the boat, and because of the net, you lose it. I'd kill myself on the spot if that was me. So buy a big musky net, you need it. But back to what I was thinking. Trying to think of anything else that I would try to suggest a brand new person needs to know to get into musky fishing as someone who's only a couple steps into it. Rods, line, baits, net. Something about it. It's more, I find, it's very like woo-woo, like more sciencey than bass fishing. I find there's something called moon phases, which I'm getting more into now, but you could look it up what they are. But based on the where the moon is during the day, there's a couple points throughout the day where the muskie are more likely to be active, where just wildlife is more likely to be active in general. So there's a lot more like things I find with musky fishing that add to it that make it funner than bass fishing. Um, because when I'll go out, I'll structure the spots I hit throughout a day based on these moon phases. So if I know there's like a major, which is a term for a moon phase, like at 1 p.m., I'll make sure to hit like my best spot at 1 p.m. Or if throughout the day, if I'm going for a multi-day weekend, on day one, if I raise, which means you see muskie follow you, if I raise a couple fish, a couple muskie follow me in a certain spot, I'll know the next day, on the next day's moon phase, I'll go back to that spot because I know there was fish there. So there's a lot of cool things in muskie fishing that I don't really pay attention to in bass fishing, like moon phases and stuff. It adds to like the allure of musky fishing. And it's so sick, dude. It's so sick when you catch a fish that caliber and you're like, holy fuck, like there's shit out here this fucking big. Like you're catching 4 pound bass that are fun, but like a small muskie is bigger than a 4 pound bass. And like the way they fight, holy fuck. You feel like a couple of my fish I'll show in the video, you see me like, oh, like it's pulling me, like it's manhandling me. Dude, it's fucking unreal. It's so goddamn sick. But yeah. Alright boys, my camera legit overheated right now. Can't think anything else I could say in the musky video, but other than let me know if you have any questions about the stuff I said. Let me know if I was wrong about anything. If any of you pros think I could have said anything better, let me know as well. And yeah, everything's going to be linked below. My socials below. My product links below of the things I mentioned in the video. And hopefully, and yeah, let's go out and catch some muskie. Get into it, boys.